Welcome to Active Love Adoptions podcast. I am your host, Jessica Griffith. And today I'm really excited. We have Paula Weeks on with us. She is an adoptive mom, adoption life coach, as well as an author and a speaker. Mm-hmm. So welcome to our podcast.
Thank you.
This should be really fun.
Yeah, I'm excited. I love talking all things adoption. So
Me too.
Let's go.
Me too. I know. I remember when, like in the last 5 or 6 years, I kept telling everybody in my family, I'm like, I want to work with adoption. I want to work with adoption. I just don't know how.
Yeah.
Because you don't really, you're in the world, but you don't know how to infiltrate the world.
Yes. Oh my goodness. That is so funny because there's a quote that I just heard this morning on oh my goodness. I got to think of the context. But anyway, it's a book from a birth mother. Uh-huh. And she was talking about open adoption and how she feels like she has a seat at the table, but she doesn't know where to sit.
Yes.
That was a quote. So we need to figure out the context because it was an amazing excerpt from this book.
What book is it?
I knew you would ask that. It was.
Is it one of the ones that is kind of going around right now, or is it an older?
No, it's a brand new one that I just. Oh, I know what it's called. Open Adoption. Math. Let's see. Oh, I need to be more prepared for this.
No, you're fine because sometimes sometimes it's right on the tip of your tongue, and then you're like, oh, I know what it is. I know what it is.
Yes, it was. I shared it. Okay. Not So Simple Math by Amy Seek.
Oh, okay.
It's about open adoption. And I seriously, it just started circulating this morning.
Okay.
Anyway, so kind of with what you were saying, you want to be in the adoption community. We are.
Yeah.
We're living it. Mm-hmm. How do you be a part of it and help in some way?
Yes.
How do you have a seat at we have a seat at the table. We have a seat.
We're invited to the party, but then you're like, so where do I sit at the head table? Do I sit at the back table? What?
Yeah. Where do you want me to sit?
Where do I belong?
And that's kind of what it looks like right now. But yes, sorry. So Not So Simple Math by Amy Seek.
Not So Simple. Okay, I will definitely. I have a lot of books I have to read.
Oh, I know.
I have to read. I need to read your book. I need to read that book, and I need to. We had another birth mom on who also wrote a book that I'm just gonna have a whole closet full of adoption.
Yeah.
Or bookshelf full of adoption.
I've got a whole section on my bookshelf that's all adoption, and I've probably read half of them. Relinquished just came out.
Oh,
and the book arrived in my mailbox Wednesday.
Uh-huh.
I knew I'd be driving, so I bought the Audible, and I'm about halfway through the book.
Okay.
So there's a lot of books out there.
Is that written by a birth mom, or is it written by adoptive parents?
I honestly, it's Gretchen Sisson.
Okay,
if I'm saying her name right, and I think she's a birth mom, but it's a lot of birth mom stories.
Oh, okay, so it's a compilation of birth mom stories and stuff like that. Yeah. See, and I told my sister the other day, I'm like, I want to write a book. She's like, okay. I'm like, can you help me? She's like, so maybe give me a little bit more than that. I was like, well, I don't know yet.
I mean, and honestly, there were a lot of times, just in our open adoption experience, a lot of people were like, how are you doing this? You need to write a book about this.
And you're like,
because back then, it wasn't a thing.
About it.
It wasn't a thing.
No.
And so a lot of people just didn't understand. And still people don't understand.
Well, that's what's interesting too, I think, about adoption. And and we've talked about this before on the podcast, unless you have had a personal experience with it, it's just there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And you don't know anything about it.
You don't know anything about it.
I mean, even clients at my salon, they'll ask me stuff because I also do the coordinating with the agency. Mm-hmm. So I'm with birth moms and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. And they'll ask me questions that I'm like, oh, actually, I'm not sure about that. And I'm in it. Yeah. Every day. Yeah. So, okay. But so you authored a book. So tell me about that book and how it came to be. I mean, you kind of touched on it. People were like, you need to share your story.
Yeah. Yeah.
So how did that all come?
It's funny because I started to write it, and I think I shared this before. Well, I've shared it a lot of times because I'm an open book, but, my oldest daughter's birth mother and I and her sisters-in-law and her mother, we go to a women's conference every 3 years. We try to go to this thing.
Is it an adoption conference or just a women's conference?
Just a women's conference. Okay. Yeah. Just a faith-based women's conference thing. Okay. And we would go, it's called Time Out for Women.
Oh, yeah. My mom comes up for that all the time.
Yeah. So we've gone to that, probably a handful of times together. And we were at one. It was one of the first ones I think we went to. So our little girl was probably 5 or 6. I mean, really young. Yeah. She's almost 18 now. So,
Okay.
and we were sitting there and I don't know what sparked it, but we kind of looked at each other like, why are we not up there telling our story? Like,
Right.
we're like practically sisters. We're family. And this was still early in the adoption experience,
Yeah.
you know, in our journey. And I said, yeah, let's do this. What should we do? Should we write a book? People tell us all the time to write a book. Let's write a book. So we that sparked the idea and I started to go with it. And she started to write a little bit and found out pretty early on that she wasn't in that same path and didn't feel like she wanted to participate in writing the book. So I said, well, do you care if I continue? And she's like, yeah, I don't care. And so I continued. It was about a 12-year process of writing this book.
Okay.
And well, maybe not 12 years, maybe 10. But anyway, so we were living the journey.
Yeah.
So the story wasn't written.
Yeah. So you had to, you're continually adding to it over the course of.
Exactly. Yeah. Because then we added another child and we have an open adoption with his family. And then we added another child and that's a whole different story within itself. But so yeah, I just decided, and I'm passionate about human connection and human behavior.
Yeah.
And a lot of what, people would say, how are you doing this? And I would say, one day at a time. I don't know.
Yeah.
Just it's one day at a time. And we honestly felt like God said, this needs to be an open adoption. That was the driving force. I was always open to it. My husband was kind of like,
this was with your first one or just
with our first one.
Okay. Your first one.
Our first one. My husband was kind of like, I don't know.
And this was before open adoption was really, because when I placed 21 years ago, I could have a semi-open adoption, which meant I could know first names. Yeah. I couldn't know where they lived, even though my caseworker told me, because I was really weird. I was like, I don't want him to live in Utah County. And he's like, so the people you chose live in Utah County. I was like, crap.
Yeah. No, it was, I remember being in with our agency, being in a education class or can't remember what it was, a class.
Yeah.
And they said, open adoption is kind of a thing that you may want to consider. And I guess I always looked at it like, even without hearing that, I was like, if I was a birth mom, I'd want to know what's going on with the child that I placed. If I was an adoptee, I'd want to know where I came from. I just always felt that was an important thing for me because I'm just very curious about people.
Yeah.
And connections. And so, so when they said that, I was like, yeah, okay. And my husband was like, I don't know. I mean, I think we need to let her live her life and we need to, I don't know. He just was feeling indifferent about it. When we met her, our oldest daughter's birth mom, we walked out of her house and my husband went, yeah, we have to be open. God just told me we have to be open.
You're like, I'm glad you're on the same page.
Yeah,
now.
I know. I'm like, thank you for jumping on board. There you go. That's exactly what it was. I was like, thank you. I am okay with this. So yeah. So anyway, then, and so when the book was coming out and everything, and I was writing it in a way that it was a memoir. It was our story. And I had an editor say, you're not famous. So I don't know that people want to hear your story. And I'm like,
yeah, but
okay.
How many non-famous people too put out stories that people want to read?
So it was a little bit of a letdown. I was like, all right, well, how do I write this book that's not a memoir?
That nobody wants to read, basically.
That nobody wants to read. Yes. And that's okay if nobody wants to read it. It's just a part of our story.
It's a journal of me, and I can look back and, they always talk about journaling and writing your past down and all that stuff. So,
and there's a lot that I didn't put in the book.
Yeah.
In fact, I look now and I think I really want to rewrite that book and really tell the story because I kind of hold back a little bit, I think, in the fact that maybe people didn't want to hear the story. So,
yeah, I mean, there's always that judgment that you're worried about a little bit. There's a lot of things that I haven't shared about my own personal adoption story because I'm afraid a little bit.
There's fear. There's respect for others that are in the story. Honoring their part of the story that you need to be careful with. But so I started to reframe the book in a way that I thought, okay, why do we have such open adoptions and what have we learned from this?
Yeah.
And with my passion for the human connection and human behavior, I thought, well, I feel like we're open because of some certain things, some certain qualities or whatever.
Yeah.
So the book is laid out with the acronym OPEN.
Okay.
And I use the letters OPEN with different words of expressing or explaining what I feel like at that time.
Yeah.
I think a lot has changed since then. But at that time when I was writing of what we needed to have within our human connections.
Yeah.
So I thought, well, maybe I can write it in a way that It's our story interjected into, let's think about this as an opportunity for creating a connection within open adoption.
Do you think that it's helped your children because you have an open adoption with all three of them?
Yes.
Okay. So do you feel like it has helped them? Because I know that they talk about a lot of adoption trauma with adoptees, right? And being, not knowing their birth parents and all of the stuff that comes with that. So do you think that it has helped them? I mean, you don't know any other way.
Yeah.
But have you seen positive behaviors in your children just because of the open adoption that you guys have with the birth parents?
I believe so. And again, it's their story. I don't know. They're teenagers right now.
Yes.
And
they're not giving you much.
Not really. I mean, when I ask them, I'm like, so what do you think? What are your opinions? What are your thoughts? I mean, really their response is like, Mom, it's good. We're fine. We're happy. It's great. But they don't know any different.
Yeah.
They have literally known their birth parents and their birth grandparents. And we have a very large extended family from day one.
Yeah.
And so it's not
a weird thing, or it's not this like hush hush, like we got to keep this private. And I do realize some birth parents are like, no, I want completely like cut off. But my son who's 21 is the same thing. I was like, has this affected you at all? And he's like, no.
I listened to your podcast with him. I was like, that was entertaining. I really enjoyed listening to him because I sat there and I thought, that's my 15-year-old boy in like 5 years.
Yes. And I even remember when we first, I had reached out to him, well, not him specifically, but when we first met, he was only 15 and I'd reached out to his parents and we kind of talked on the phone and stuff like that. And then we met him and he tells me later, he's like, I kind of forgot that my mom had asked me if I wanted to meet you.
Yeah.
And I was like, yeah, because you're a 15-year-old boy. Plus, as a birth mom, I'm like, it said to me, you've had a really good life and you're not feeling some type of hole in your life and needing to know me.
Yeah.
Which I know some people probably would be hurt by that, but to me, it just solidified like, this is where you belong. And these are the people you belong with. And I'm so grateful that you're happy.
Yeah. Yeah. And just because adoptees belong, they are still a place for biology to be a part of that.
Of course.
And so I think that there's this idea that, actually, I don't know.
Like it's taken away or something?
Yeah,
or that like
it's taken away.
It's replaced by, and correct me if I'm wrong, as an adoptive parents, did you ever feel worried that there would be some connection with your children and the birth parent that you would feel lacking in? Does that make sense? Like,
yeah. Sure.
Like, was that a fear? I mean, well, yeah.
It wasn't. So here's the thing. Like I said, I don't claim to have done it right. I know that I've got a lot that I would have liked to have done different.
Parenting in general, like adopted or not, like we're all doing it wrong.
We're all doing it wrong.
All of our kids are going to be in therapy. It's fine.
I was talking about it with somebody the other day. And I'm like, I didn't know how to be a parent till yesterday. And tomorrow I'm not going to know either. I mean, it's just, that's the way it is. We're just, you don't, adopted or biology, parenting is hard.
Yeah. Parenting is hard no matter what.
Yeah. And so when it comes to that part of it, as far as fearing the relationships that my children would have with their first families, birth families, I don't know that I feared it.
Okay.
I'm not, and to be fair, I'm not a real fearful person. I don't necessarily
like, you don't live in a space of like anxiety or like.
I don't think I do. I don't feel like I do.
Yeah.
I might, but I don't feel like I do.
Well, but maybe you do in some areas, but not all. Like maybe in this area you don't, but there's other areas that your husband would be like, you 100%.
Yeah, you are totally. Okay. I don't like roller coasters because they make me sick.
Yeah, so you're like, why would I go on those?
So I'm fearful of roller coasters.
I'm a little bit scared.
And then my daughter loves them. No, I think the first time that it became a realization for me of those connections that they would have, I think my daughter was about 7 or 8. My oldest daughter was about 7 or 8 or something. We were spending the weekend with her birth family, her birth mother and grandparents and siblings. And my daughter was having a rough morning. I think something about her clothes weren't fitting right. I don't know.
Yeah.
And we were driving to church and she said, I fit better in their family. And I was like, yeah, you do. You really do, honey. Yeah. Because I don't know horses, and horses is her birth mother, and that's my daughter, and they have that connection. So it was one of those realizations where it was like I had to kind of process that afterwards. You know, obviously, I wanted to make sure that she understood that I agree.
Yeah.
You do. And that's okay, honey,
Yeah.
that you feel that way. And truth be told, we went and sat down in church. I walked out and went to the bathroom and bawled because it was hard because it was like, it was that moment that I think every parent expects their children to come to them and say, I hate you as a parent and I wish I could be with somebody else. Or they're all going to do it at some point, And so it was that was a moment for me. But as far as, fearing a connection that they would have with I probably push it too much.
I was going to say you probably
wanted
it because you are so fascinated and nurturing of the human connection.
Yeah.
And it's so important.
And there's a bit of a pride in that I love my kids and they're so amazing and I want to share them
with everybody.
Yeah. And their birth parents should be the first ones
that get
to have them and have that shared feeling. And, or that connection with them. And so I don't know, I guess I just was always like, oh my gosh, you have to come, check this out or whatever. And when we have events or my kids have things going on, I'm always like, no pressure, but please come. Yeah. Like, in a couple of weeks, my second daughter is doing an event and my oldest daughter's birth mother and sisters-in-law want to come. Because that's family for us.
Yeah, because you're supportive and that's what you do for family.
And we're an all or nothing family.
Yeah.
And we told that when we were waiting for our second but last child. It's complicated. We told our daughter's first family, you get another grandkid, you want one, you get all.
Yeah, you can't just have this because each child's story is going to be different. So you don't want them to feel like, oh, well, this birth, like my son and I have a great relationship, but his sister and her birth mom have zero. Like she doesn't even know who she is.
Yeah.
And so, but honestly, I look at them like when we first met, his mom was like, well, can his sisters come? I was like, absolutely. Yeah. Like this is who he's grown up with. These are his siblings. This is who he feels comfortable with. And I would want nothing more because I want to meet them too, because they're a part of his story and on some weird level, my story too, because
for sure.
It's this extended thing. And
so
I totally agree with that.
So I guess to answer your question, I don't feel like I ever had that fear. I just always felt like I wanted to ensure my children, they're not just mine. Yeah. And to be honest, and this is the way I believe, and a lot of people are going to disagree with me, and I don't, this is who I am. They're God's children. Yeah. And so I have the privilege, I know that.
Of raising them. Yeah.
But they're not just mine.
Yeah.
They're theirs first, they're God's, then theirs, then mine, and that's just kind of the way I've always approached it in that way. But yeah, so I do know that that's a big fear. And it's a thing that I think a lot of people struggle with because we're humans. Oh my goodness, we're humans, and we all look at things differently. Yeah, it is very complicated.
And emotions are complicated, and everything is not as much as we want it to be black and white. It is not black and white. It's so we live in the gray area like 97% of the time.
Exactly.
And there's like the 3% of like this is black and white, and that's it.
Yeah, but we're in the middle.
We're always in the middle. Yeah, I know.
And if we can find a balance in the middle and dance through it that way, then good. That's great. And being able to tap into our emotions and understand where those emotions come from is a huge part of being human and making and having those relationships. Yeah. Being able to open up to that.
And it's probably a really important part of connection too.
Yes.
Is like living in those feelings, seeing kind of where that leads you, having those hard conversations sometimes.
Oh yeah.
And the painful ones, like even your daughter, even though it wasn't a conversation, her saying like, I fit better with them. You're like, but then you're like, also that breaks my heart because
it's hard to hear. I mean, we had a conversation the other day with our middle child, our daughter from, we adopted her 5 years ago from Ecuador.
Okay.
She was 12 and we were having a hard conversation with her the other day and she got angry and said some things and it's still a little raw. So if I start, I'm a crier. So
okay, same.
Anyway, I was hurt, but I was so glad she said what she said.
Yeah.
Because I knew I could understand, I could hear what she was saying. And I was like, oh, I'm so glad that you can share that with me and express how you're really feeling. Yeah. Sure, it hurts.
Yeah.
But it's okay. And I think that, within adoption is so complicated and it's so hard. And right now it's, there's a lot going on. And to be honest, if I'm a firm believer in, and this is part of my coaching practice of how I approach it, everyone deserves to be heard, seen, and valued.
Yeah.
Right? But we don't always have to agree.
Well, that's kind of in general as a American population right now. It's like, it's okay if we disagree.
Yeah.
Like we can live in the same space and you can believe one thing.
Yep.
I can believe one thing. I don't need to change your mind.
Nope.
Like, but let's have an honest conversation and maybe I'll learn something and maybe you'll learn something.
And that's exactly what it is. You go into it thinking, okay, I have an opinion. I have a feeling. I have a thought.
Yeah.
And I know you do too. And it may be different. And that's okay. And I could learn from you. Like you just said.
Yeah.
I'm going to learn from you. You're going to learn from me. We can all come to a common ground that who really needs to be given the attention in this whole scenario? The children.
Yeah.
Because
of course
we're raising them.
And that's like this is where it all started, right? Like literally that's where everything started.
They are the core
of
everything. They need to have the opportunity to be raised in a way that they can grow with a whole sense of identity.
Yeah.
They need to be heard, seen, and valued. I just think that it's so important that we understand that we don't all have to be on the same page other than to ensure that those kids get a fair shot.
When I think the kids too, everyone is heard, right? Everyone's heard, but everyone's not seen.
No. You're right.
And that's where I think it gets hard is the kid, like when you said the other day with your daughter, you're like, it was really hard for you to hear, but you gave her the opportunity to not only be heard, but for you to see her and to see where she's coming from, to see her emotions, to feel that raw, even though it hurt.
Sure.
But you're like, I'm glad you're honest with me. And I'm glad that you feel like you are like, I'm such a safe place for you that you can be honest with me. Because that's the last thing you want is your child to feel so unsafe with you and sharing their real feelings that they withhold that. Yeah. And then that's where I think you maybe run into the whole identity crisis too. It's like, well, if I can't share this with my mom and I have to figure this out on my own, none of us are really good at figuring stuff out on our own.
Oh, no,
we all need a third party to like talk about it and be like, hey, like, have you ever thought about it this way? And you're like, oh, we had a recent, so my dad was in the hospital last week and he was possible open heart surgery and he's in his 80s. So like, that's really scary because you're like, you know, you go to the hospital and something like that. Sometimes you don't come out. Luckily he didn't have any of that happen, but there was something that happened with my mom and her reaction to him in this whole situation, which me and my sisters were like so mad about. We're like, why is she acting like this? She's being so nonchalant. This is an open heart surgery. Like what is happening? Yeah. So one of my sisters, she had gone to her therapist and kind of was working through kind of how she was feeling about my mom. And the therapist had a really good point that I think we all need to remember is my mom was in kind of this fight or flight, right? So she's panicking. This is her husband of 50 plus years, possible open heart surgery. So she went to where she felt most comfortable, which we were like, that's not where you should be. You need to be here. But in her mind, that's how her dad dealt with it. And that's how she's dealing with it. I don't think necessarily she realizes that, but giving other people the space and realizing, okay, I might be mad because of this reaction that they're giving me, but I have to understand that their reaction is not going to be my reaction. Yeah. And I have to give them the space and the grace to have that reaction and then work through my own response to said action. Yes. Which I think is hard as a human to not just ultimately go to that like angry space. Yeah. Or I can't believe they're doing that. You know, and so it was pretty eye-opening because we all were like, after hearing that feedback, we're like, oh, okay. And we weren't like as mad at her because we're like, I get it. Yeah. Like I get that that's how she deals. Yeah. And there you are seeing her. Exactly. And valuing what she needed, not what you think she needed. Exactly. You know, a couple of thoughts just came into my mind. My sister and I, who I stayed with last night, we were having a conversation actually about some things. And it was interesting because it was one of those things where we think we know what somebody might need, but they know what they need better than we do, right? Yeah. So it was interesting because I thought of the example of
My husband, I love gift giving.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's your love language? It must be.
It must be. It must be. I don't know. I love gift giving and I put a lot of thought into gifts and like, but the problem, and early on in my marriage, my husband was like, did you think that was what I wanted? I said, well, that's what I think you want. And so he taught me in that moment that maybe I need to think about the receiver and what they want rather than what I think they want.
Yes.
And here's the problem. I do that all the time. I still do that.
Well, but it's hard because you're like, this is coming from my heart. So I think that you'd be happy regardless of what it is.
Right.
Because I put a lot of thought into this.
Yeah. But there is something to say for, yes, it's good to put a lot of thought and effort and think, okay, this is something I think that they would really appreciate. And regardless of the fact that, it just the simple fact that it's a gift, be grateful, whatever, blah, blah, blah. Right?
Yeah.
And yet, is that how we should be seeing people? In the end, it should be that I'm really tapping into understanding that person, knowing them, seeing them, hearing them, valuing what they have to offer, and then thinking, okay, this is what they want.
Yeah.
This is what they need. And giving that gift.
And sometimes that's hard.
Yeah. It is hard. It's not an easy process.
You have to like, not physically, but you really have to put that effort in to that. And sometimes that's so out of your comfort zone that it takes more work to give them what they need instead of giving them what you think they need.
And that's just it, is if it's too much work, a lot of times we don't do it.
Yeah.
It's too much.
Yeah, it's too much.
And which is fine. Some people just don't want to put in the effort and the energy, and that's okay.
Yeah.
That's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. And then another thought I had was, Heidi and I were just talking about this at the office, and another part of what I focus on in my coaching is my best life model, living your best life. Yeah. And I love acronyms, I really do, and so I always go with acronyms. But anyway, BESTE.
Okay.
Living your best life, and that all human behavior and emotion or behavior ultimately comes around the beliefs that we have that create the emotions that create how we show up. Mm-hmm. And then that's the outcome. And then obviously you embrace it because that's what it is.
Yeah.
But where I think there's a lot of difficulty is the showing up part.
Yep.
And what you were talking about earlier, how we respond or we react, right? Emotions are very physical.
Yeah.
And it's something that we can tangibly grasp onto. The thoughts or the beliefs is where we struggle to really understand where those emotions are coming from. Well, we can't control what created the belief, but we can control how we show up.
Yeah.
And so really understanding that emotion and what created the emotion, and that it's not the fault of the circumstance or whatever.
Yeah.
It's that, how we show up. And so it's a react or response. Are you responding to it in a healthy way? Or are you reacting to the emotion, not the belief that you have?
Well, and it's especially hard too if you've always shown up or reacted in a maybe negative way your whole life, right? Mm-hmm. And then trying to relearn how to show up in a positive way.
Mm-hmm. It's hard.
Changing those pathways in your brain of like the consistency or things that you do unconsciously. Mm-hmm. And to really have to think about the things consciously that you're doing and how it's affecting other people, not because you have to live your life for other people, but you also it goes along with the human connection. It's like, of course, you don't want people to be mad at you, but sometimes you're like, that takes a lot of effort on my part. Mm-hmm. And am I willing to put forth that effort for this person?
And that's what it comes down to. Are you willing to ...
Yeah.
And you need to know yourself well enough.
And you need to be honest with yourself.
Because
sometimes you're like, yes, I'm 100%, I'm all in. And then you're like, nope, I'm not all in because I'm totally failing. And then it goes, and you spiral and you're thinking, I'm terrible. I can't believe I didn't follow through. And this whole thing. Yeah. So,
it's a cycle. I mean, it's human behavior. It's really, it's hard. And when it comes to adoption, there is definitely an added component to those connections and understanding that we all come from different stories, but can we all meet at the center for that child? Yeah.
So because you have life coaching for adoptive parents, correct? And you have a system that you've put in place with that. And do you also have one for birth mothers too?
Not yet.
Not yet, but you're working on that.
I would love to. To be honest, some of my concern is I'm not a birth mom. And so now, I would
love to help you. I would be happy. I've always wanted to create something. So if you need some help, I will be your birth mom.
I love it. To be fair, I'm a life and wellness coach.
Okay.
And so I could essentially coach anybody.
Yeah.
About life.
I've chosen
open adoption parents with open adoption.
Okay.
Because I think that it is a very complex relationship. Yes. It's a lifelong thing. I think
ever changing, I'm sure.
Yeah, ever changing. I mean, our open adoption stories and connections look different now.
Every single one looks different too.
Yeah, every single one looks different, and it looks different than it did 17, 15 years ago. Yeah. And we're working through an international one at this time. And so that's a whole different journey. And so it's very complex and difficult. And so really when it comes down to it, I want to help people figure out how they show up.
Yeah.
In general, so that then they can show up in an open adoption.
So can you share some of your, what your workshop, what would you call it? Like not workshop, but like what your coaching system would be for the adoptive parents. Like, can you share some of those maybe bullet points or?
Sure. I mean, I think, like I said, I like to start with the best life and figuring that out. Some of my life coaching clients, we go through that almost on a regular session.
Yeah.
Is okay. What's your best life look like right now? And what do we got to work through? I have a workshop that just went live, setting healthy boundaries.
Okay.
And within open adoption with compassion and clarity. And so bullet points would be understanding what boundaries are, why they're important, why we even need to consider that when it comes to relationships with people. The fears around open adoption. I know that there's a lot of fears from both sides that, adoptive parents have fears about birth parents, and birth parents have fears about, who's raising their children. Yeah. And, so there's fears all the way around. And it's okay to have those fears, but what are those fears based on?
But also maybe not living in that
and not live in the fear.
Yeah.
And figure out a way to alleviate those. And we, work through some of those fears and talk about, how to alleviate those fears. And a lot of it comes from, like I said, that best life model.
Yeah. And when did you start doing your coaching and wellness?
So the life and wellness coaching I keep
butchering it.
No,
like
you're
the
fine.
Life and wellness coaching, the coaches and wellness.
Yeah. Coaching. When did I start coaching?
When did you start coaching?
I've been coaching for about a year and a half.
Okay.
I was certified a little over about 2 years ago, and have been doing some life coaching for about a year and a half. And then just now, trying to really niche down and help within the adoptive community. I love adoption. I think it's a good thing. Yeah. I really still do. Sure, there's some things that could be done better.
Yeah.
I think we always, anything, right? Yeah, we
medical
always
feel like.
I was gonna say it's not just adoption. Yeah, it's not just adoption that needs to change. Everything needs to change. But then that's why we're here.
Yeah,
we're here to learn and to grow and to figure things out and stumble along the way and hope to come out
on top.
Well, better. Better than when we started.
Better.
Yeah.
So I have to ask you, there's this whole thing with Congress that's trying to move through. What are your thoughts on that? Because as a birth mom, I know I was in California and I came to Utah. I wasn't flown here by an agency. My parents didn't, or my sister and my mom did research. I ended up coming out and doing LDS Family Services. But from my perspective, I think if I would have had to stay there in California and place my baby, it would have been a nightmare. Not only because I was so vulnerable that my mom was afraid that I was going to go back to the birth father, which I 100% would have.
Oh, okay.
Because I had no self-esteem and I would have just ran back and been like, love me.
Yeah.
And then also just like with the laws in California and all that stuff. And so I know that they're trying to like pass laws that birth moms can't make that decision. Like they're taking that choice away from us.
Mm-hmm.
And that really bothers me because I feel that way even with abortion. I don't agree with abortion, but I also don't think anybody's choice should be taken away from that. So kind of what are your thoughts on all that's happening?
I'm going to be, I'm totally
Please be honest.
transparent and honest. Yes. First of all, when it comes to politics, I don't like it. It's ugly and it's hard for me. I'm
not a political person at all.
Yeah. And I really try to be educated and aware of what's going on.
Yeah.
But I also try to ensure that I'm going to live by what I feel like is right. And that's what it's going to be. And I'm going to get a little bit faith-based for a minute.
Please do.
The whole reason why we have this earth and this life that we're living is to make choices.
Yeah.
And to hopefully make good enough choices that we do get to end up back with God.
Yeah.
And that's my belief. And that's okay that I believe that.
Yes.
And it's going to be different than other people. And that's okay. However, having said that, we were given that right to choose.
Yeah.
So when government entities come in and try to overrule the capability and the human right we have to choose and have free agency, it bothers me a little bit. I think that I'm pro-life.
Yeah, obviously. So
I'm pro-life, but I'm a firm believer in the reason these little ones are coming to earth is to be able to get a body so that they have the opportunity to make a choice to then end up back with Heavenly Father or not.
Yeah.
God or not.
Like they get to have that choice.
Yes.
The whole purpose of us being here is to make choices, good or bad.
Good or bad, yeah.
But also I think most of them, like we're all going to make mistakes, just like in parenting. Like we all make mistakes, right? And like
every day.
The way that I saw a quote the other day, which I posted, I'm sure you saw, it was basically like, if you went back and erased every single mistake you ever made, you would erase yourself.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I said, that's 100% true.
We are who we are the choices we make.
Yes, we are our choices.
We are our choices.
And some of them are great and some of them are bad. Yeah. And I always tell my kids, like, look, the villains in every superhero story, they all have the same origin story. The villain and the good guy. They just chose to use their powers or their whatever differently. Mm-hmm. So make sure you choose to use it in a good way.
Yeah.
You know, and I think probably because you're an adoptive mother, I'm a birth mom. It angers me when people are saying, we know what's best for you.
Mm-hmm.
And we're saying that this is X, Y, and Z is best for you. Mm-hmm. And I don't feel like currently a lot of those decisions are being made by people who care, really.
Yeah.
Or
are invested well enough.
They're not invested. And I know it's like,
and what are they protecting?
Well, that's the other thing. So, cause you're like, there has to be like maybe a snake's head or something they're protecting. Cause why are we so adamantly like saying we have to funnel this? Mm-hmm. We can't let it just be a free for all. Mm-hmm. So, cause also and I'm only obviously can speak of birth moms, but we have birth moms coming from all over the country, right? Mm-hmm. We're not shopping for them. They're finding us, right? These people who are making these laws don't know the situations of these birth moms, right? Like for me, I'm like, I needed to get away from the birth father, not because he was abusive, but because it was in the best interest of my mental health.
Yeah.
And for this baby.
Yeah.
And just the laws that were going on at the time. I mean, my dad is an attorney. His law firm used to do adoptions 30 plus years ago. As soon as the laws changed in California, he's like, we got out. Mm-hmm. And so you don't know, like this birth mom could need to get away from an abusive situation. They could need to get away from family members. They could need to they just maybe need to have a break for a minute.
Yeah.
They need to have a month where they're like maybe not worried about every little teeny tiny thing. Mm-hmm. And I think it's unfair.
Yeah.
When a third party is putting those restrictions on people.
Yeah.
And I agree with you as far as like religious based, we're all here to make choices. Mm-hmm. And the whole point of us being here, like the reason we're actually here is because we
made a choice.
got to choose
to come.
to be here.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. And I think, I don't know what else other than I just want to stand by that we have the choice. And I think when we have a third party come in and take away those choices. Now, I haven't sat on one side or the other with this law and this bill. I need to do a little more research in it for sure. But when it comes down to, my feelings about it, it would be that we need to still allow choices to be had. And then some may think, well, if you're pro-life, why aren't you pro-choice? Well, I'm pro-choice that you're allowing that child to have a choice.
Yeah.
In a opportunity to have a life or not. Yeah. I mean, it's a very complicated thing, and I don't want to necessarily say that I know what is right or what's wrong. I just know what I believe.
Well, you know what's right or wrong for you.
For me.
Yeah. And you're not trying to project that this is right or wrong for everybody. Because everyone has their own. I mean, if we're going to be faith-based about this too, we're technically judged on the knowledge that we have. Yeah. Correct? Yeah. So you can't judge someone on the knowledge of X, Y, and Z. Going back even further, what we talked about earlier with, my mom's reaction to something traumatic versus what I think her reaction should be. Yeah. Same thing. It's like, I'm judging you because this is the choice you're making because that's not the choice I would make. Yeah. Because I chose to carry a baby for 9 months. And I could have chosen differently, but I didn't. But I also don't fault the people who chose to maybe go down a different road because that
was their choice.
That was but it's also what they've a belief system.
Yeah. A belief system, the knowledge they were raised with, what they understand to be right for them. And that's okay for them. Yeah. I don't agree with it necessarily, but I'm not going to tell you did wrong.
Well, and I don't think you'd also either ostracize someone to be like, no, I'm sorry, you're cut off from me because I can't.
Absolutely not.
Because you're making this wrong choice.
Absolutely not. Because when it comes down to it, and this is my firm belief in adoption and in life, in human behavior, we are all children of God. Yeah. We all have a right to be here. We all have a right to choose. And it's okay that we don't all agree. Yeah. I have family members and friends that have made choices that I don't agree with. Yeah. But I'm not going to ostracize them, like you said, or shun them or even shut them out because they're still children of God.
Well, and it's kind of like, what would Jesus do, right? I mean, it's like that's the whole purpose. Right. It's like we're here to become better people. Yeah. And I think it's easy to ostracise. It's easy to judge. It's easy.
Because we don't understand.
Yep.
Because we don't agree. And because we don't sit on the same side, then the easy way out is to just shut them out. Yep. And if you choose to do that with somebody, fine.
I mean, there's a difference between setting boundaries and shutting someone out because of a choice they made. Yeah. So.
Well, and kindness has to play a part in everything. Just being kind in the fact that, you choose this. I love you for you as a human. I don't love the choice you just made.
Well, I mean, that goes along with that being a parent, right? I mean, there's been my birth son called me and he was telling me these things. This was probably a year and a half ago. And I was just thinking, oh my gosh, what is he doing? And I'm not even his parent. You know what I mean? Yeah. I'm just this third party bystander. And I'm just thinking what in the world? And, so a year goes by and we end up talking again this last September on his birthday. And I was finally I was able to be honest with him. And I was like, oh my gosh, I'm so glad you got your head out of what, because you were making some real stupid choices. And he kind of chuckled. And I was like, but also I'm really proud of you that you didn't live there as long as I did. And he
came out of it quickly.
And he chuckled. He's like, well, and I said, well, mother, son, right? And, we kind of just laughed about it. But even still,
it's parenting.
It's parenting. Your kids are going to do stupid stuff. I know that obviously my parents weren't super thrilled with a lot of my choices either. And I'm sure they still occasionally, aren't thrilled with why would you do that? But it's all part of the human experience.
I mean, we're as parents, we do our best to raise our children and to teach them values. Yes. Whatever those values come to for them, They will get to that.
Yeah.
They will get to that. But our job as parents is to kind of guide and coach them through this life in a way that they can establish their own values.
Yeah.
I mean, the other day, I love my kids dearly, and that will never change for me, right? I don't care what their choices are. They will always be my children, and I will love them. And the other day, though, oh, my son. I love him dearly.
Like you just have to bless his heart.
Bless his heart. Yeah. He's an amazing kid. But the other day he chose to refuse to say thank you for something. I mean, it was really stupid. It was really stupid.
Like a really small thing.
And he kind of just gave me this look, and I called my husband and I went, at what age do teenage boys stop being punks?
How old is he? Is he 15?
He's 15.
Okay.
But this kid is, I mean, seriously.
But he's on next level punk. Like he just is like.
But he's amazing.
Yeah.
And you know, he's like, I'm sorry, I apologize. I shouldn't have been that way. And it's like, well, I don't understand why. And again, this is one of those things. I don't understand why you chose to deliberately be kind of a jerk.
Yeah.
Rather than take 2 seconds to totally change the trajectory of a relationship.
Yeah.
Because of a choice that you wanted to make. And you made that choice. Now, love you. Think you're a punk. We're going to move on, or whatever. But yeah, so it's just, I think that's the way it is with all human behavior, and that we all have choices to make, and we all have to learn how to rectify with those choices that other people make.
Yeah.
And not necessarily accept them or be okay with them, but there is a sense of human decency where we can't necessarily treat them horrible because of their choices.
Because of their choices. Yeah. Of course. Sometimes you do wish them. Sometimes I'd look at my husband and I'm like, I know I can't smack them, but oh my gosh.
Yeah, like I kind of want to beat you around the bush right now. Yeah.
I can't. I need to be alone for a minute because I can't.
There is a real thing about mommy timeout.
There is. And I put myself in it probably more than I should.
Right?
And my husband's like, does dad get a timeout? And I'm like, no. Like, that's not a thing.
Well, especially not when I need a timeout.
Well, mostly because they can turn their volume down in their ears. True. Like women, we can't. It's just like,
it's just there.
It's just always on no matter what we do.
Yeah. Yeah. I know. It's funny.
So you're originally from Idaho, right? Like, were you born and raised? Where were you?
So I was born in Hawaii. I grew up in the military. So I moved around my whole life, which is, I think, plays a huge part in my fascination for people.
Yeah. Because you were always around different types of people.
Yeah. I mean, I lived in Europe and Hawaii and East Coast, West Coast, Central. I mean, I've been all over the place, and I'm fascinated with people in general. And and I grew up middle child of 7 children.
Okay.
It's interesting, actually. I was talking to my sister last night, and sister, if you end up listening to this, I love you. I've recently been grappling with the trauma terminology. I recognize it. It's a thing. Absolutely. 100%. It's there. It's a part of it. It's a part of life. It's all the things.
More so recently, though.
Recently.
Yes.
But I also feel like it's not what defines all things.
Yeah.
And I say that. So I was sharing with my sister this a video that I did, and I'm going back and forth whether or not I'm going to share it. But I grew up in a family of 7 children, biological, all 7 of us. And I'm the middle child, and I always felt out of place. Like I felt like I'm just a little bit different than all my sisters and brother. I was raised in a loving home. I was raised with 2 amazing parents, and all my siblings, we squabbled like normal siblings do, but we got along. We were each other's friends. We, moving every 2 years, we were all we had until we made new friends. And I always felt out of place.
Yeah.
And there are some parts of my life that I feel like, man, that could be really considered traumatic for me.
Yeah.
Right? My children, sure, probably could feel like they are out of place in my home. So do you have to be an adoptee to feel out of place?
Mm-hmm.
Do you have to be an adoptee to be traumatized? I 100% understand and recognize that trauma plays a part in all corners of the adoption constellation. 100%. And we're not talking just adoptee, adoptive parents, birth parents. We're talking grandparents,
everyone's
siblings,
affected.
aunts, uncles.
Because it's
Everyone
not just the people.
Yeah.
It's not just the adoptive parents and the birth parents.
Yeah. That's why it's a constellation now, not a triad.
Yeah. It's nieces, nephews, grandparents, aunts and uncles,
biological siblings,
yes.
all the things.
Yes.
And so, yes, there is absolutely trauma. And we need to recognize that and honor that. Yeah, when it's definitely something that's prevalent in our lives. But I also don't feel like we need to say, because I am adopted,
X, Y, and
my
Z.
experience is traumatic.
Yeah.
Because I am an adoptive parent, my experience is traumatic. Birth parent.
So how do we change that though?
How do we change that? That's a very good question. And to be honest, I don't know that I can answer that right now.
Yeah.
I really feel like that is kind of what I'm kind of on a mission in a way
to
figure out how do we fix that. And you know what? And I'll tell you an experience I had the other night. Again, this is vulnerable. I'm pretty transparent.
That's what I love about
and I'm so
this.
sorry.
No, don't apologize.
The other night, okay, I'm a gym rat. I love working out.
I'm there.
It's
like
my
6,
thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I am. Yes. We used to own a gym. And
Okay.
so I love being at the gym. But I've tried yoga for a lot, and I'm 46, and so my body is kind of not that great. Yeah,
it's creakly a little bit.
It's yeah. So
Crinkle.
so yoga, I've always tried it, and I don't like it very well.
I know,
because it hurts my joints, and I don't hold the position. I have a little bit of ADHD, so I don't hold the positions very well.
And it's like, it's not fast enough.
It's not fast enough. It's not moving. And I feel like I want to hold the pose for a moment, and then I'm like, okay, I'm out of it. Let's go to the next one.
Yeah.
So finding and being present and finding self and those kind of things, I struggle with because my brain does not do that.
Yeah.
I'm all over the place. Okay. Well, the other night, and I'm coming back to your question of how we fix this.
Yeah.
So bear with me.
I believe you'll get there. I believe you'll get there. My husband has ADHD too.
Yeah. Okay. So adult onset apparently.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
Anyway, and so we did a yoga class the other night with some young women in our church the other night, and the instructor. I am.
Okay.
I am.
I just got released as the president a month
really?
ago. So yeah.
Oh my goodness. Yeah. I'm with the 16, 17-year-olds.
Oh, they're fun.
And both my girls are in my class. So
that's
it's great.
Really fun.
But it's really great. But they also really know how to call me out on things in the middle of class. And I'm like, all right. But anyway, it's kind of fun. But anyway, so we were doing a yoga class, and the instructor that the president brought in was a friend of mine, and is just now on her yoga journey, starting to be an instructor and everything.
Oh, cool.
Well, anyway, the way she taught it was amazing, and the things she was saying and talking about, and trying to help these young girls recognize that their bodies are amazing no matter what they look like.
Yeah.
And anyway, so it was just a really good class.
Yeah.
Well, at the end during Shavasana, she said, okay, I want you guys 5 minutes. We're going to lay down. I just want you to really try and dive in. And I'm sitting there thinking,
you're like, 5 minutes.
I can't do this. I can't lay here for 5 minutes. Right? And she's like, and it's going to feel like a long time, but I just really, and so then she said, I just want you to lay there and say, God, what do you need me to hear right now? And that totally changed my whole perspective about life. Because I've tried to do that before.
Yeah.
And again, I struggle to get my brain into one thought sometimes. And so I laid there and I thought, I'm going to try this. I'm going to do it. And I said over and over, God, what do you want me to hear? God, what do you want me to hear? What do you want me to hear? And in that specific evening, I was struggling with one of my children and some issues and parenting stuff. And I distinctly heard, just love them. Just love them. They don't need you to teach all the time. They don't need you to coach, which my kids tell me all the time. Are you trying to coach me, Mom? They need you to love them. And I went home and I told my husband, I said, and it's such an easy answer. We all go to it, but really, isn't that what we really need to come down to? Now, love isn't the answer.
Yeah.
Love is a tool that helps us get there. So maybe that's an opportunity for us to solve the problem, to recognize that, there's adoption is love, adoption is trauma. Which way
one?
goes?
Yeah.
Guess what? They
It's
both apply.
Yeah, I was going to say they can both coexist.
They both apply. They both coexist. And so when I heard that the other night, I thought, okay, it's love. It's love. And I'm not saying that's the answer, but it's a powerful tool. And so if trauma is your story, gosh, I love you. If love is your story, then that's great. But whatever, and the thing is everybody has a story. Everybody is entitled to their story. And none of us need to use our stories necessarily to change the minds or the opinions of other people. We're just here to guide and say, hey, this could be another way. I could look at life from somebody else's perspective as an opportunity to learn and be another way. Yeah, I've got thoughts, but I'm trying to be respectful of people's stories.
Well, and do you think, I know it's hard because it's interweaved in their stories.
Yeah.
I try really hard to only share certain things about my birth son that I feel like he would be okay with. And same with even my parents and my siblings. I don't want them to ever listen to me and think, oh, that's how she really feels. Or why would you say that? Or why, like, that's not even a part of your, because I had my story shared and it was devastating. Like, people were talking about it. People were telling other people what was going on. And I'm like, that's really unfair. I'm not even there to, like, and you don't even know it all.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you're doing it to get back at me for something.
Well, and that's just it, is if we're telling other people's stories, we don't know the whole story.
No. And it's like, you only know the snippet of story. And a lot of times the people, not all the time, but I do feel like the people who are actively sharing your story and not being mindful, their agenda is different. They don't have an agenda of love.
Yeah. Their
agenda is maybe trauma because they live in that space. Because the brain is a very powerful thing.
Oh, yeah.
And I think when you, especially because trauma has been such a huge thing as of late.
Yeah.
So if you continue to tell yourself, I was traumatized by this. I am so traumatized because this happened. This, and this trauma. Like, you're telling your brain that that's what it is all the time.
Yeah.
And that's the only way your brain knows how to see it.
Yeah.
Is that was a trauma.
Yeah.
Because I know a lot of birth moms, I'm not going to say all, but a lot of birth moms think that, the whole adoption experience is traumatic.
Yeah.
For the adoptee and all this stuff. And I'm like, but why do you feel that way? What part of your narrative or what part of your life experiences have shown you that this is traumatic? Because everybody, like you said, everybody has trauma in their lives.
Sure.
Everybody. Yeah. It doesn't matter. Like, I was raised biological siblings, great parents. Our house burned down when I was 9. Lost everything.
That's a traumatic experience.
That's a traumatic experience. It has projected, like, I have things now as a 41-year-old woman that, like, I'm afraid of the dark at 41 years old because of that experience, right? I can pinpoint exactly when that happened.
Yeah.
So something, I mean, I know it's not small, but something that, like, just being afraid of the dark, which shouldn't be this traumatic thing, is so ingrained in who I am as a person. And I have to, like, relearn that, like, it's not a scary thing.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's funny. A side note, my husband and I actually, we have a neurofeedback clinic.
Okay.
And the brain is fascinating and it can be a powerful thing for good and for bad.
Yes.
And, and it was part of my healing journey was neurofeedback, which is why my husband decided he wanted to
open a clinic,
pursue that. And previously as a counselor and then decided talk therapy is great, but if your brain's not functioning properly,
then it's not
going to do anything, So yeah, the brain, when you bring that up, it's a fascinating thing to me. And I think that's a part of a lot of my education and research that I do is around, okay, why is human behavior this way? And trying to look at it. And the thing is everybody's story is different and we need to address each buddy's, that was really good English. Put that
I know
up.
what you meant.
Everybody's, I know, right? Because we're on this texting autocorrect. Everybody's journey needs to be addressed uniquely with love and care. Okay, again, it's not necessarily the answer, but it is a powerful tool.
But it's like a jumping point.
That can help us get to where we need to be.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to ever tell somebody that their story is not traumatic or that their adoption journey wasn't trauma for them. But I also don't want people to tell me that mine isn't loving and adoption is rooted around love.
Like it's not an all or nothing. Like it can't be like it's all trauma or it's all love. It can't be both.
No.
And like we said before, it can be both and it is both.
It is both. It absolutely 100% is both.
Because I think bits and pieces, even of life, bits and pieces of your life are going to be not great. They're not going to be sunshine and rainbows all the time.
Yeah.
But sometimes they are.
Yeah.
And it's amazing.
Yeah. It is.
And you don't want to live in that space
and
all the time.
So the thing is, you mentioned the fire and now you don't live necessarily in that trauma, but you have something that affects you. You bet. Absolutely. And we can address that and we can discuss that. Not you and me, but you know what I mean? In general. Do you want to do it right now? I know. Should we do some coaching? But no, really, it's effective. It affected you, but let me ask you, do you feel like your life is trauma?
No.
Okay. So can we just say, I guess when the word is there, I feel like it's finite and it's like, this is the way it is.
Yeah.
It is what it is because the word is.
Yeah.
Well, let's figure out a way to address it in a way that adoption has trauma. Life has trauma. Adoption has love. Life has love.
Yeah.
I mean, try to figure out a way to change the narrative that we can all get on board with and say, this is a part of the story.
Yeah.
But it doesn't, you're not doomed to be traumatized because you were adopted. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah, forever.
I know. It
at times, yes.
Well, at times, and of course,
you bet.
There's certain times, like when I smell smoke in the air, I get triggered and all of a sudden my body shuts down. And like, if the power goes out, I can't stay at my house, which my husband, he's so great because he doesn't even, it's not like he makes fun of me, but I'm like, I can't stay at my house because the normal like sounds of a house and buzzing when the like power is on. Yeah. Even with all the lights off, like just that sound when it's not there.
It's going to trigger you.
That's what triggers me. And it's like, I know that, but I also don't, it's not like every day I wake up, the power's going to go out today. The power's going to go out today. Like I don't, because you can't.
But some people's brains can go there.
Yes.
Where every day they wake up.
And it's like automatically
it's automatic, the trauma. And it's a refresher every day. Yes.
Or you're obsessing over something and you're constantly like, I've recently over the last couple days, couple weeks or whatever, I've found myself obsessing over this like one thing. And every single day, like over the last like 3 or 4 days, I've just woken up and been like, can you please, like, I'm having this conversation with God. I'm like, please let me just not worry about that today. Please let me not have it take up my whole day. Because I'm like, I can't. I can't have it take up my whole day. And over the last 2 to 3 days, it's subsided. And I've just every day I'm like, thank you. And tomorrow I'm probably going to ask the same thing because I realize this is something that's not going to change overnight. And I'm okay with that because I also realize that's part of my personality is to be a little obsessive over things.
Me too.
Over really stupid small things.
Yes. We spiral.
I'm like, I shouldn't be stressing about it, but I do.
Yeah.
But it is because nobody likes that feeling.
No.
Nobody likes the feeling of always feeling anxious or nobody likes the feeling of like, I'm not good enough or, this like constantly obsessing over the trauma.
When going back to the brain.
Yeah.
Right. There's an upper brain and a lower brain. We survive in lower brain.
Okay.
We thrive in upper brain. It's easier to survive than to put in the energy to thrive. And so when we're obsessing over a traumatic experience.
Okay, I'm going to totally write this down. It's easier to know I'm serious. I'm like, that's the best quote I've heard all day. Not all day. We've had some really good ones.
Yes.
But continue to talk.
Yeah. I think that if we recognize that, okay, if I'm spiraling or the trauma is driving the car right now, then we're typically in our lower brain where we
Is it like fight or flight? Like in that,
it is
that
fight
the
or flight. Yeah.
brain?
Lower versus upper. So lower brain, you're breathing, you're eating, you're walking, you're just going through the motion. You're surviving. You're going through the motions, right? And that's where we usually spiral. And that's where our emotions tend to just kind of get stuck. It takes us taking that emotion to the upper brain or recognizing where we want to thrive and say, okay, why am I having this emotion?
Yeah.
What belief or thought is creating this emotion? Okay. Not that belief or thought is wrong.
Yeah.
But you got to figure out a way to understand that whatever the circumstance or whatever the event that's happening, that's creating your belief and then that emotion, it's not that event's fault.
Yeah.
It's our belief.
And then our reaction.
And then how we show up. Yeah. And so it's really hard to go from, especially when you're in a heated anger or the emotions are high.
Yeah.
You're not going to necessarily be able to get to that higher brain. And that's okay. But that's not when you make good decisions. You don't make important decisions.
Which is why I said I'd always go back to the birth father, because it's like I was just in the survival mode, and it's like I was keep doing the same thing.
You were getting the reinforcement that your survival brain needed.
Yes.
You needed to figure out a way to step out of that, which is what you did.
Which is why coming to Utah was so beneficial, because I was able to remove myself
from the situation, from the survival.
Okay, I'm not thriving. Here I'm thriving. Over here I was not thriving.
Yeah.
And then I was able to be like, oh, okay, so what he was doing, not great.
Yeah.
His behavior towards me, not great. My behavior towards him, also not great.
Yeah. Not great for you.
Not great for me.
Yes.
And my mental health, which, and it's easy to take stock of something when you're removed from the situation.
Yes.
Because nobody ever does well when the emotions are high.
Yeah. And I'm just going to relinquish the book.
Yes.
There was a birth mother that was telling her story. Like I said, I haven't finished it yet, but there was a birth mother telling her story. And she was talking about how when she was in the hospital and about to relinquish and sign the paperwork, and she's holding this beautiful little baby girl. And she's like, I don't want to do it. I don't want to do it. She said, but my emotions were high. The oxytocin had kicked in. I'm loving on the emotion.
Oh yeah. The hormonal.
She was surviving in the hormone emotions and all those things. Right.
And your primal, like, when you have a baby, you're like, I need to take care of this child.
Yes. And it's a thing. Right.
Yeah.
And she said, but then I had to go back to when I was in my thriving, and she didn't say these words because I'm just prefacing it to what we were talking about. In her thriving brain.
Yeah.
She made the decision to place.
Yeah.
Right. And then, so when she's in this moment where she's like, the moment has come, and she told herself, I had to go back to, no, I made the decision in my right mind to do this. So I'm going to stick to it. And it's hard to do that. It's really hard to do that in just in our brains and in human behavior. The other night, he had a discussion with one of my children. And like I said, she said some things that I know that in her thriving brain, she would not have probably said, and came back later and said, I'm really sorry I said that. And I said, I'm hurt that you said it, but I'm so glad you said it, because that means that's really how you feel. And she struggles to express how she feels.
And then you're like, now we can have an open conversation.
Now we can talk about
it.
Yeah. Let's move on. Yeah. Let's move into this and process this and heal from this so that we can heal for the next thing. Anyway, so yeah, it's the brain is so incredibly powerful, and we don't understand it. None of us understand it to the effect that it really is 100%. I mean, I think there's definitely experts out there that can, and we try and piece it all together. But really, when it comes down to it, what is right and how can we heal from all this? Love, see, hear, and value everybody in their own stories.
Which it sounds a lot easier than it really is.
It's not easy.
Yeah.
It's not easy. And I'm not claiming that
I'm just saying that like, it seems like such an easy framework.
Yeah.
If we could all just do that, but it's not, because of all of our different life experiences and different, sadnesses and choices and how we were raised and just all the things that we have to put in that work and really say, okay, this is how I'm processing.
When you're in your surviving brain, you don't want to work.
No.
you don't want to do it.
No.
And unfortunately, that's where a lot of us live.
Well, I think especially even after COVID too.
Oh yeah.
Like COVID hit and all of a sudden like we're all just surviving. And we're just like, I don't even know what's happening 90% of the time.
It's like, what's going on here? Yeah. So, and that's where it becomes a difficult thing, because I think when we are all in survival brain, it's hard to rationalize and to really get to a healthy state. Yeah. And so it takes effort, it takes work, it takes knowing ourselves well enough to know, okay, what can I handle in this moment? And what am I willing to put forth to make this, and when it comes back to open adoption, what am I willing to be willing to understand, learn about, and get into my thriving brain that I can contribute to a relationship for the benefit of a child.
Yeah. And that's all it's about, is that child.
Yeah. And it needs to be. It absolutely needs to be. We have been given the privilege and the right, not in the sense of, adoptive parents versus birth parents.
Oh, no.
We have been given that right from God.
As a human.
Yeah. To raise generations of people.
Yeah.
How are we doing that? Whether adopted or biologically.
Well, I always joke, like I knew that my birth son was meant for the family he was meant for. I just knew it. I'm like, he just got here differently than maybe they anticipated and I anticipated. But I 100% believe, does he have some of our characteristics? Like he reminds me of my brother. Yes.
Yeah.
However, I just think that the way we all get here sometimes is just not like in anything, like the way our lives work out. We're like, that's not how I had it planned. And it just works out that way, and I don't even know what time it is. I don't even know. I know.
Oh, we probably ought to wrap this up.
All right.
I think that when I think about adoption itself, and a lot of opinions and disagreements is that it even should exist. It's not going away.
No.
And so the way I choose to see it is, okay, trying to wrap this up. God is incredibly powerful, and he could have absolutely given me the right to have children and given me the capability and all that, right?
Yeah.
He could have. He absolutely could have. And he could have given birth mothers and he did, the right to parent or place or whatever. What I'm getting at is he didn't give me that right. But I really believe that adoption is a part of an option for building families. That's just what I believe. I really do.
And building families is like number one, most important.
Right. And guess what? Family is not just biology. But biology plays a huge part in my family.
Yeah.
And it should in all families.
Yes.
So when I say family, it's not me, my husband, and my kids.
Yeah. It's
the whole gamut.
All of them.
The whole constellation. And so I really think that adoption is a, albeit a difficult history.
Yeah.
And a solution to I don't even know if I want to say problem, but a solution to a roadblock. The only way I could be a mom, and yes, I'm being selfish. I wanted to be a mom. But the only way I could be a mom was through adoption.
Well, and I wanted to have my teenage years. So technically me placing on some level was selfish.
We're all selfish though. Every choice we make is a selfish choice.
It is, because you want to know how, like, kind of the coexistence of like, I wanted my birth son to thrive. I wanted to thrive. We couldn't do that together, unfortunately.
Yeah. And yet you still are able to be a part of his life.
And I love
in
it.
some way. Yeah.
And I love, like, he has a relationship with my mom. Like the other day he called and I was like, what? You talked to him? And she's like, yeah. And he told me all these things. And I was like, what the heck? Like, I didn't know that. And then my husband says the same thing. I was like, stop it, guys. But also I love it. Keep doing it. But include me next time in all of your text messages.
Right? Wait, where was I not on that
thread?
Wait,
he's moving? Like, what? My mom's like, oh yeah, I invited him to like California. And I was like,
oh my gosh.
I was like, what is happening right now?
That is so funny.
But it was fun. But
it's a whole dynamic when they become adults. And I'm on the cusp of that.
And it's great. It's so wonderful.
Is it great? I'm really scared. Okay, there's my fear.
So far.
My children are going to leave me.
No, so far I think it's been really, really beautiful coming, because just seeing him change into adulthood too, and the relationship that he does have with us, but also with his parents as it's evolved. It's been so incredible, even though we don't talk all the time, but just to see it. And
I love it.
And so I think you'll really be like, this is amazing.
I look forward to, and I hope as a mother that I was able to, raise my children in a way that they, when they become adults, which is months away, 2 of them.
Well, I wouldn't count on it like yet, but like maybe when they're like 23-ish.
Okay, maybe. Okay, you're right. But still, they now have the opportunity to create their story in whatever they want it to look like. And I hope that we did a good way in parents to present that to them and say, okay, we did what we thought was right and best for you. Now you go into the world and be a human.
Yeah.
A kind
and
human.
And don't crash and burn, please.
Right? I know. Well.
You're like, but I guess you kind of have to.
And
so like, maybe don't tell us all the things.
I know.
Just like, just the things.
But I want to know all the things. And I think it's
one
really
of those
bad.
Things that you're like, I want to know all, but I don't want to know all. And it's like, where's the line? Where's the line?
Anyway,
okay.
We could go on for hours.
I know. We really could. Paula, thank you so much for joining us.
You're
was
welcome.
A really great discussion. And I think we should have you on again so we can talk more about brains and
oh my goodness.
And once you get your birth mom stuff together, like I would love to anyways, it will be great. And I need to read lots of adoption books clearly because there's a lot out there. So
there are a lot out there. But don't let it
I know. There's some out there that are I know. There's a lot out there. So but
anyway,
thank you for joining us today. If you or someone you know is looking to adopt, please visit our website at aactiveloveadoptions.com.